all. My name's Peter Miglis from Woods Bagot, and with me is Jan Scheldhoff from UN Studio. This project for us is a 16-year journey, started back in 2006, so we're excited to share this with you. Quite often people talk about the city skyline defining the city, but for us this project is very much that the city is defined by the streets and the soul and spirit reflected in the ground plane of our cities. And it's also fundamentally about preparing a significant city block in the city of Melbourne. Further to repairing the city block, some of our key design drivers was creating a new heart to this particular part of Melbourne, a place that's always on through a very heavy curation of program, almost like a city in itself, and a referential layered landmark that it's unique through creating identity that's born from its place. So this is very much about a mending of a significant city block, introducing a new mix of buildings through a nexus of laneways that reignites the romance of Melbourne's hyperdensity. It's located at the top end of Collins Street. It's a block that measures 100 metres by 100 metres, bound by Collins Exhibition and Little Collins Street, and there hasn't been any significant development here for approximately 20 years. Its main address is Collins Street, and it's Melbourne's most prestigious high-end street. Imagine it's, say, the Fifth Avenue in New York in terms of its status. In 1980, the Nauru government built Nauru House, and for many years it was the most tallest and loneliest building on the site. And it was conceived as this utopian monument to wealth and corporate largeness that totally removed any perimeter buildings, its old heritage streetscape, and very sort of inhumane in its public domain. And this photograph in 2017 is just before we started work on the site. And you can see how this forecourt varies in levels. It really didn't nurture any sort of pedestrian movement through the site. It was actually quite unsafe through these sort of subterranean levels. So the project is essentially 4 major components, and this is the existing building, which we took as a positive contribution to the whole site, and we could have removed it, but we kept it, and it becomes this sort of active component in the whole composition in creating this richness to the site. The first big move was to remove the complexity in the various ground levels and created one on-grade experience. So it became this sort of labyrinth and network of laneways that you were able to transverse through the site and sort of provide this sort of sense of discovery. We then reinstated the 3-storey massing streetscape, which is synonymous with all the streetscape around that area. So this became this sort of natural fit to its context at the ground plane. We added a 255-room short stay hotel as well, which then becomes part of the chemistry of creating this 24-hour activation. And a new commercial building on Collins Street is introduced, and it's lofted above the existing heritage and the new streetscape, preserving that and creating this curtilage that's easily identified. So all these programs of varying identities combine to create this new city block, leveraging off each other, create this whole sense of being on all the time and allowing a potential of approximately 8,000 to 10,000 workers to use it daily. And through this co-location of various uses, there's this opportunity to share and create a level of efficiency. For example, in the existing building, we inserted the third space, those corporate facilities in which the hotel utilises and which the new building also uses. And within the new commercial building, we actually put in the services which the existing building taps in. So we started to create this district service approach for the project. The floor plan on the top right there illustrates the octagonal geometry of the existing building, allowing us now to orchestrate how the new buildings come close to it, where we come, within 6 metres and then pull apart in the order of 25 to 27 metres through the nature of the octagonal geometry, and also starts to inform where we start to put cores and deal with daylight penetration and privacy as well. So we create this new social heart to the project. We take the cues from the existing streetscape, the rhythm and scale, to create this diverse scale. And you can see in this sketch here, the heritage buildings start to inform these new pavilions of this sort of 3-storey scale. And this important plan here just starts to show that ground plane experience, sort of the network of laneways that weave through the site. We prioritise the larger sort of retail tenancies around the perimeter, and in the centre you start to get that much finer grain. And you start to get a streetscape that starts to feel natural. It's a natural fit to its place. It starts to echo the scale and rhythm of the heritage buildings that are already there. The use of materials like limestone and bronze detailing, again, synonymous with that of Collins Street and the surrounding streets. A streetscape that now promotes the social vitality of the city, reinstating the full perimeter street block. So we've taken the existing heritage on the building and transferred that podium height through the street there on the right. And each pavilion provides a flexibility over 1 or 2 or 3 levels. Some integrate roof terraced areas, allowing people to experience higher levels. We played with widths to create that level of intimacy in the laneways. This one, for example, 4.5 metres. And here you can start to see a very important laneway connection which connects us with an existing lane directly behind it. And you arrive in this central urban park where you can either pause or there's performances. And the ability for the commercial lobbies to feel more like laneways in themselves and being less corporate. They connect back into the network of lanes, and hole-in-the-wall type retail tenancies that add personality and charm to the precinct.
All right, that brings us to the hotel. So the hotel for us really did 2 things. 1, it was the key address to Little Collins Street, and 2, it brought in this kind of 24-hour usage to the site that is so important for us to make this a vital place of the city again. When we look at the existing piece of land we had, it's really much sandwiched between the existing office tower and the neighboring block. So for us in the design process, this was always conceptualized as a hidden gem, something you can discover while wandering through the streets. The facade articulation picks up clues from the horizontal cladding of the existing one, as well as the geometric articulation of the new office tower, and brings this together in a way that it maximizes both the views and privacy for the rooms. You can see one of those street connections that Peter was mentioning. So we see this heart, this little square that we've created in the center that really starts to be the pivotal point for all the laneways that come together. And you can see on the right-hand side how we've reconnected those laneways. When I first saw the site, this was the car park entry and exit and a huge mechanical plant. Now this has been knitting back and healing again the network of these great corridors within the city. The lobby and the lounge of the hotel becomes the living room for the whole precinct, where both visitors as well as the workers come together to enjoy their afternoon. The interiors are designed in a way that it makes everybody feel at home straight away, and it's all locally sourced material. So what was inspiring for me as well is that this gives international travelers a glimpse into the rich palette that Australia has to offer when it comes to materials. This is my favorite slide of the whole deck. So for me, this really shows the power of mixed use, the power to bring diversity, to bring scale, to bring identity. Collins Street used to be dominated by office workers and high fashion retailers. Now you can see a rich mix of Melbarians that have rediscovered that part of the city, that make it active 24 hours, and that activation really starts to spread out beyond the block into the precinct. And for me, this is really one of the most powerful things that mixed-use precincts can achieve. This has been a project that has been developed very much from the street, as you've seen. So, and the facade articulation does not make any difference to that. We've taken the historic street lamps and their crystal character and have developed a diagram that has playing with the idea of a jewelry piece that reflects back to the city and that it hangs on top of an office tower that provides structure as well as services. What this does for us is that you can see that on the street level, the historic buildings are still the heroes. So we're not taking away from their historic importance and their power. But when you look further away, like we do in this shot, you can see how the corner is re-articulated and how we've healed what the previous building did not achieve. The facade articulation for us almost has the quality of like an abstract artwork. So you can see whenever the weather is changing, whenever the sky is changing, that also the quality and the reflections are changing. And then we bring this 12-meter cantilever back in the chamfer with this abstract pattern that reflects the activity and the liveliness that lives on Collins Street back onto the street. For me, this is the biggest award you can possibly achieve. Everybody of you that was in Melbourne knows what a great culinary and restaurant scene it is. For me, the best in the world, really. So for us to, you can see the tower being, within the landmark towers of its neighborhood, but the coolest thing is that this has then been picked up by one of the local chefs who's created a chocolate dessert from it. So we've come from a street lamp to a 200-meter tower facade to a chocolate dessert that everybody highly recommend to try once you're in Melbourne for the next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. What a spectacular project. It obviously worked very, very well in the public realm in the way that it brings the scale down to that of the streets. I have a practical question before I pass to colleagues. The retail, for example, where you have Mulberry and George Jefferson, is there anything there sort of retailers to operate on a small footprint, 3 or 4 stories high? Is that retail all the way up? And how to do this way, not to go from all the way, you've got more ground floor, more frontage, more visibility?
Yeah. So the retailers can actually take up 2 wide modules if they wanted to, and they could also take up 1 module and trade over 1 or 2 or 3 levels as well. So we didn't show a section, but what you can actually achieve is, say, 2 levels of retail, and then a hospitality operator might come over the top one. You can start to see that when you get those landscape terraces over the top. So you start to get this sort of really meshing of different program. And within the laneway itself, there's the vertical circulation of the lifts. They start to bring you up to the hospitality that lives above those little retail tenancies.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, I'll turn to Barat. You're ready with a question?
It's a very nice project. Do we have a ground floor plan or side plan? Are you using the ground floor of the existing tower as well?
Yes. So what we did with the existing ground floor tower, we actually lowered it slightly as well, so it all relatively on grade, and make it connect back within all the other laneways as well. So each of the lobbies get their primary address, say, from the street, but they then also connect into the laneway proper itself. You can see up on the sort of upper right the existing lobby.
I think Pete has touched on that quickly, but the key thing for us really was 2 things: that we kept the existing tower, so that we brought in the density without demolishing it, which was a discussion in the beginning. That we make it part of the whole network again, and also that it creates a diversity. So instead of just an A-grade glitzy office building, you've also got that second product that also allows people that would otherwise not be able to afford a Collins Street address to be part of that community, to be part of that precinct. And so we get this wide mix of the new tenants for the South Tower, and then the ones that would now inhabit the Old Tower. So for us, this really was also about a conversation around these tired office buildings that we see all over the world from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that are now all up for discussions because they're not fit for purpose anymore for the current office use. And for us, this could really become a model of how, by creating density in other ways on the site and doing small interventions into them, you can give them a second life for the next 50, 100 years.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask John, as a fellow Australian, who probably knows the site well. I'm sure you'll have a question.
do know very well. Thank you for the presentation. It's a great scheme. In such a dense site, and you've added density to the site, major buildings, sunlight is an essential characteristic of the urban setting, particularly the laneways. Are there particular studies that one would talk to try and find either moments of daylight or shifting light throughout the day, or something that guide that essential characteristic of the urban setting?
Yeah, I mean, as you will know, John, fortunately, the site faces north, and what we're able to do is the laneway that faces north is aligned directly with that central open space, and we get a window of opportunity in that central pocket park, shall we speak, where we actually get light in it, which is in alignment with, say, lunchtime, for example. So during those sort of lunch hours when people might come out and enjoy that space, they get a pocket of sunlight through there. But it's very much about, Melbourne's laneways are sort of protected. You don't get huge amounts of sunlight in it. It's about the amenity, the operators, that richness that comes with it to create those spaces.
And for us,
In addition to the fantastic urban regeneration here and renewal of the building, the embodied carbon story, of course, is fantastic. But could you add to it the other aspects of sustainability that incorporate onto the site?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we've created a central plant system in the new commercial building in which both the hotel and the existing building can leverage, and also the fact that they operate at different hours means they can utilise and share that as well. The new building uses chill beam technology, for example, but I guess the biggest sustainability story of this is what Jan spoke about, is that whole urban regeneration of this particular site itself.
I think the other thing that was key for us in the beginning is that the existing tower also protects us from a lot of direct sunlight, because obviously heat load is the big thing. For European like myself, that north side is our south side. So that's the right side to protect yourself from the sun. It took me a little while to figure that out. But the existing tower basically does that for us. And you can see on the arrangement of the cores that we arrange the other cores in a way that we have maximum protection from direct sunlight, protecting us from additional heat loads, and therefore allowed us to make a tower that's very transparent all the way throughout.
I see that besides the density of the office building, you've created density with the retail. And what I find fascinating is also the scale, which is quite human. And I was wondering if that was intentionally done in order to maybe inform future projects of that nature. And how do you see that maybe happen as a trend?
I think as Jan mentioned, we're always dealt with sites that have these existing buildings, and the fortunate thing for us in this situation is that the geometry of the existing building allowed us to place the buildings where we could. If we had a rectilinear floor plate of an existing building, we couldn't get those proximities, but due to the nature of those geometries, it opened up views, allowed daylight penetration in. But I think it is an example of looking at future projects where we look at density to make sites much more invigorated by utilising existing buildings.
Thank you. I want to one last sneaky question. Did the client want to keep the existing building?
We explored keeping and losing it as well. But what it did, as Jan alluded to, it created different rental incomes as well. So we're actually able to get a diversity of different types of tenants throughout the project as well. But I think what was an issue to begin with has actually become a catalyst for great change on the site.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And to come and accept your award.